Hello, everybody. This is Petrosexuals, and it's me, Winston. It's been a while since we've done a video. We've been a bit MIA, but I'm hoping moving forward to be able to give you some Formula One coverage each week. So, without further ado, let's just jump right in. So, the Spanish GP happened just over the weekend, and this was in Barcelona. And most of the teams came in with some developments, some new stuff that they were putting on their cars. Team Mercedes, and I'm a Mercedes fan, just putting my biases out there. Team Mercedes seems to have finally figured out what it was wrong with their car. And Toto Wolf, which is their team principal, I think on Saturday had an interview on Sky Sports where he talked about how they'd been backpedaling. They've been in the back for a long time because they didn't really even have a car, a competitive car, and now they seem to have a competitive car. So now they're about to start development. George Russell, who I know you guys don't know any of my predictions because we didn't start this when the season started, but basically I've spoken about how Russell has the makings of a champion. One of the most important things that a champion needs to have is luck, and Russell seems to possibly have siphoned all of Lewis Hamilton's luck. But yeah, Team Mercedes seem to have figured it out. They're not porpoising as much on the straights. I think even doing practice 1, 2, and 3, they posted some of the best times in the straights, even better than the Red Bull, which means that they have a lot to work on. One of the most interesting events in the Spanish GP, especially during practice, was the Green Red Bull. Yes, Aston Martin has pulled a stance that they pulled, I think, 2 years ago, where they had I think the Mercedes, a look-alike to the Mercedes W11 or W12. I've forgotten which one it was exactly. But this time with Red Bull, they have a car. Their current car now seems to be an exact replica of the Red Bull car. And of course, many people had a lot to say about that, and they were actually investigated. But the FIA said that based on all the things that they checked, all the information that they cross-checked and reviewed, it's all good in the hood. So it checks out. Aston Martin says that they've had this kind of development way before the season started, and that they couldn't have had taken information from Red Bull and then replicated the car in such a short period of time. And that does kind of check out. The FIA actually asked Red Bull to bring to them all their workers that had left the company over the period, and to cross-reference with to see if any people had been poached from Red Bull by Aston Martin within that period. But it seems everything checked out and it's all good. Other teams were definitely putting up developing their cars. Ferrari isn't really doing much in terms of development, although if I remember correctly, Charles Leclerc has had a new unit put in his car. So there's a variation between Leclerc and Sainz's car, because I think Leclerc has a newer engine as opposed to Sainz's. And Charles Leclerc, who's been dominating the season, dominated qualifying. It was actually a very impressive run. He spun out because of, I think it was on turn 4. He spun out, the wind seemed to have knocked him out, and then he went out to post the fastest time, beating Max Verstappen. So before we went into Sunday, it was Charles Leclerc on pole, Max Verstappen second, I think it was Perez third, George Russell fourth, Sainz fifth. I've forgotten, sorry, the ranking. And then we got into Sunday, and I must say this was the most entertaining race of the season so far. Barcelona, this Spanish GP was who? I mean, the FIA made changes to the cars, the rules and regulations into the cars, because they were hoping to have a lot more close contact racing and a lot of overtaking. And based on the Spanish GP, yeah, I think what they've done, I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, because even people like Perez have complained about the potential health effects that could be affecting the Formula One drivers in the future because of all the porpoising and stuff like that. But we all believe that it's something that's being worked on, seeing as how all the teams now have a flat budget and they can't really overextend their budgets. it's been a very interesting season. But let me get to yesterday's race at the time of this recording. It was a fantastic race. It was like a blockbuster movie. There were sword fights, and when I say sword fights, George Russell versus Max Verstappen. Max had a few issues with his DRS. His flap wasn't opening, and he was always trying to overtake George Russell. And man, it was like a sword fight. They were going at it, and Russell beat him. But when Max finally fixed his DRS situation, he was able to beat Russell. But Perez beat Russell first, and I think Perez beat Russell because Russell went to pit in. Now, when the race started, everything was cool. Everything was kosher. Russell was able to get into third. It was Leclerc first, Max second, Russell third, and then it was Sainz. There was some interesting thing going on, but by turn two, Kevin Magnussen kind of bumped into Lewis Hamilton. When the FIA looked into it, they just called it a collision. Like, was because I think because the collision happened in the first lap, and typically in the first lap there are a lot of, it's just a recent accident because there's so many cars packed together because everybody's trying to get ground and get a position. So there was nothing to be done about that. Okay, Mag ended up being 20th, and Lewis Hamilton was actually 19th. He had to go and change his tires because he had a puncture. And Lewis actually wanted to leave the race, to quit the race. He actually said on the radio that he didn't think it was worth it. But then his team told him that he should keep running and try and gun for points. At least 8th would be fine. And Lewis proceeded to give us a very stellar drive. He proceeded to be 6th at the end of the race from 19th position. He was about 30 seconds behind the person, the 18th person, and he was able to pull through. And I know many of us who watched the race and many of us Lewis Hamilton fans, we talk about the fact that what if he hadn't had that collision with Kevin Magnussen, would he have potentially won the race? I don't know. I cannot speak to that. What I can speak to is that it's something that many people in F1 have said about Lewis Hamilton. When he's backed into a corner, he's able to deliver fantastically. So Lewis Hamilton was able to get all the way up to 5th. He actually beat Sainz, and the only reason why he had to come down to 6th was because he had an issue with his car. Lewis Hamilton had to give up the 5th position because his car was experiencing a little problem. Apparently, his water pump was kind of acting up. Russell had a similar problem earlier in the race where he was getting a warning that his engine needed to be cooled. And yes, even though the race was a very hot day, they were really worried about that. But Lewis full-fledged had an issue with the car, where to the point where if he pushed the car any harder, he would have DNF. Did not finish. He would have ended up not getting any points. So Lewis had to pull back, and then Sainz went past him, but he was able to be the 6th. And that was a great run for Mercedes. Mercedes is actually very happy. Now, on the other side, Max Verstappen's DRS issues didn't really bother him. After he had it fixed, it was a problem. You can have different perceptions of how Max handles pressure and how he talks to the engineers and stuff like that, but that's not here, neither here nor there. Masterful driving, but I think Perez should have been allowed to win because in my mind we are too early in the season for you to be picking favorites to get a championship. I think at this point in the race it should be open and free for all, so that whoever wins until a point where it's clearly shown that, okay, there's this much of a gap in points between you two, so we are going to have to focus on this person. Then we do that, because Perez had to give up the first position. He beat Russell and was first, but he had to give up that position to Max. Some people say that the team had Perez do that because they kind of effed up the DRS situation, so they were trying to make amends. But why make amends at the expense of another racer? So I think Perez should have been allowed. That's just me. I don't run the team, so that's just me. But considering the fact that Perez, apparently a statistic is out there that says that about 30% of all Red Bull cap sales or something like that is from Mexico, and they're all for Perez. This shows that he has a very huge fandom and everything. So I think it's too early in the season to be picking favorites. That's just what I think. Now to Ferrari. Ferrari did not have a great race. And I actually saw someone on Twitter who had tweeted about having bet on Leclerc, and now everything had gone um, to proverbial shits because Charles Leclerc DNF did not finish. He lost engine power, very much akin to I think the second race of the season, where I think the first or the second where Max Verstappen lost power whilst he was in the lead, and Charles Leclerc was in the lead, and I think in the 16th lap he lost power. Also, Sainz spun out in turn 4, a place where Max Verstappen also lost control in, because apparently there were certain specific times where a tailwind was moving through, so it moved the car and then he lost control, and that kind of did affect his race. It was a home race for Carlos Sainz, but he didn't score pole position, and that was really sad. So at the end of the race, it was first Max Verstappen, second Perez, and third George Russell. The race, like I said, was one of the best races. There was a very cool, what I call a drive-by, because I'm alluding it to a blockbuster movie. There was a drive-by executed by Max Verstappen on Bottas, where Max actually went wider than you typically would in order to overtake Bottas, and that was really, really cool. There was a lot of fantastic driving across board. I forgot to see who won the driver of the day, but my driver of the days was between George Russell for his masterful defense against Max Verstappen and actually holding his position for so long and so well throughout the race, and then also Lewis Hamilton for a miracle, pulling from 19th and 30 seconds behind the 18th person. Not even 30 seconds behind who was at the top, the number one. He was 30 seconds behind and that's that's a huge gap, and he was able to make amends, and that was exceptionally good driving. And me personally, as a Mercedes fan, I'm hoping for the best. What I want to happen moving forward. Next up is Monaco. Monaco is happening this coming weekend, so they don't have a lot of time. Oh, also let me touch on the issue, on a few issues. Now nobody's talking about this, but I am wondering if Aston Martin is sandbagging, and I'll explain what sandbagging is for those who don't know what sandbagging is. Sandbagging, so this is the Formula One term for the day. I'm hoping to throw that in every other time to get more people to understand Formula One. The Formula One term for the day is sandbagging. Now, sandbagging is a situation where a racing team intentionally underperforms so that it would seem like they don't have the potential that they actually have. As to why they would do that, there are varied reasons why a team would do that. And some of the reasons could be that they've put certain upgrades and they do not want others to be privy onto it so quickly in the game. Or maybe it's just because for varied reasons. It could be varied reasons, but basically it's a deliberate thing that a team will do to underperform, and then later, so maybe sometimes they do it so that people will, like, when, for instance, people thought Mercedes were sandbagging in the beginning of the season because Mercedes had come with the no side pod thing. Most other teams had the side pods. Mercedes didn't have any side pods, and most people thought that Mercedes' poor performance was because they were pretending, hence sandbagging, but they actually weren't. They were in a fix. So there's that. Nobody's talking about this, but I'm wondering if Aston Martin is sandbagging. What if they do have a very amazing car, but because the FIA was on their neck, they've decided to just let this race go and then in Monaco do something. So let's look forward to Monaco and see what's going to happen in Monaco. Also, yes, Lewis Hamilton's issue. Lewis's issue with the water pump is a very delicate situation because teams are allowed a specific number of engine swaps, and then you get penalized depending on how you go about it. So now in a Formula One engine, where the Formula One engines are typically very non-intrusive in the sense that they are so, because Formula One is also focused on saving space, saving weight and maximizing performance. The engines are extremely compact, so you are not able to open an engine and pry it apart. But once you pried it apart, you've pretty much damaged the engine. So that costs money to repair. So what some of the Formula One with tech whizzes are talking about is that Mercedes will probably have to get a probe inside the engine. So that would be a non-intrusive way to inspect the engine to see what the water pump issue is, and then if it's fixable, they would have to fix it. If it's a bad issue, they would have to fix it, which means that they might actually have to get a new engine. But if it is a reliability issue, they could kind of get a little less punishment for that. And if in trying to solve this reliability issue, they're able to improve performance, nobody is going to complain because our focus was on the reliability issue, and now we are adding a performance upgrade. So maybe they could do that. Unfortunately for them, Monaco, the temperatures in Monaco are not so great because it's a water pump for cooling the engine. It was hot in Barcelona. So if they were somewhere in Netherlands or something, a much colder place, it would be an issue, but it wouldn't have been that big an issue because if that warning sensor came in the last lap, which is kind of what happened with Lewis this race, he could still push because the external temperatures would have accommodated in keeping the engine slightly cooler. But they're going to Monaco, which is a street race, and Monaco is going to be extremely interesting. Do I have any predictions for Monaco? Charles Leclerc has a very interesting history of not particularly being able to complete a race in Monaco, even though that's his home. And I think Max Verstappen also lives in Monaco. So it's going to be an extremely interesting race. Monaco is one of the most prestigious races in Formula One, and it should be a very, very fun race because this is where the fine tuning, the development stuff, new development stuff happened in the Spanish GP. Now the fine tuning is happening. So all teams are going to be grinding super, super, super hard, and I'm looking forward to it. So, hopefully next week you guys will see me again. I'm really hoping that will be the case. And if you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and let me know if there are any other rules about Formula One you would want me to touch on. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and I hope to do many more. So show your support by watching this video and liking, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.